Good morning and welcome to the Killik & Co market update. It's been quite an exciting week in terms of Brexit negotiations, and I think we're all quite surprised and quite impressed that Boris Johnson has managed to reach a new Brexit deal with Brussels. The market too has been quite impressed, in particular sterling. We have seen quite a significant rise in sterling over the last few days as a Brexit deal has become apparently more likely. If you have a look at this chart here, you can see that our currency against the dollar has gone from about 122 all the way up to about 128, and that really is quite a significant strengthening. It's also been quite interesting to have a look at the performance of some equities, particularly companies that are heavily dependent on the UK for their revenue. Examples include some of the banks such as Lloyds and RBS, and also some of the UK-focused house builders. Now, all of these companies depend on the UK fairly heavily for their revenue, and last Friday, some of these shares were up more than 10%. Now, last Friday was the day on which Brussels publicly commented and said that it would be possible to reach a new deal. So the strong performance of these shares does imply that perhaps we could expect further strong performance in UK equities if an orderly Brexit deal is reached. Now, tomorrow on so-called Super Saturday, MPs will be voting this new deal, and we will be watching very closely to see what happens there. Over the last few months, we've been watching these protests in Hong Kong, and as yet they've really shown no signs of slowing down. And it's starting to become quite apparent that these protests are having an impact on economic activity within the region. Over the last couple of weeks, it's been reported that wealthier citizens in Hong Kong have been either moving away from the region or at least moving their money or their assets away from the region. So it does appear that economic activity in the region is starting to slow down. And we had quite a good example of this morning in the results from Intercontinental Hotels Group. Within their results, they actually made a comment that said that their revenue across the Hong Kong region had actually reduced by more than 30% because of these protests. So really a good example there. So we've been having a look at other companies that have got high exposure to Hong Kong, and one particular example is HSBC. If you have a look at this chart here, you can see the global revenue breakdown of HSBC, and you can see that more than 29% of revenue currently comes from Hong Kong. So that really is quite a significant exposure indeed. And in fact, in the full year 2018, more than 58% of profit for HSBC actually came from Hong Kong. So I think this does show that if there is a further negative impact on the region, this could impact HSBC. So something to bear in mind there, and perhaps something to discuss with your investment manager. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the tariffs that the US plans to impose on Europe because of the World Trade Organization ruling admitting that the EU has given illegal state subsidies to the aircraft manufacturer Airbus. So as a result, the US wants to impose tariffs on products such as wine and cheese from Europe. But one specific item on the list was men's wool suits from the UK. And over the course of the last couple of weeks, it has become apparent that this is impacting businesses on Savile Row. So over the last couple of weeks, a number of tailors on Savile Row have given interviews saying that because of the tariffs, products they sell into the US have been hit by a 25% tariff, and that is starting to impact their business. So I think this is just a really good real-life example that shows the impact that these tariffs can have on individual people and businesses before you even start to think about the impact on the wider economy. So just a really nice real-life example there. Now, having a look at the week ahead, clearly the biggest item on the agenda for next week is Super Saturday, when MPs will be voting on this new Brexit deal that Boris Johnson has managed to agree with the EU. So that's the thing we'll be watching most closely. But we've also got a number of corporate results next week. It's quite a big week for tech companies, and we have got results out from Amazon, from PayPal, and from Microsoft. That's it from us. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Friday.